The scorching sun beat down on El Paso, Texas, in the summer of 1995, a relentless golden hammer against the parched earth and stucco homes of the lower valley. It was a heat that seeped into everything, including the very rhythm of life in the Flores household. Isabella Flores, though everyone called her Izzy, was a wisp of a girl, barely 12 years old, with eyes the color of dark chocolate and a smile that could melt the desert's stoicism. She was the middle child, a bridge between her older brother, Mateo, always with his head in a baseball glove, and her younger sister, Sophia, a constant whirlwind of giggles and demands. Izzy's world was a small, vibrant constellation centered around her family. Her father, Roberto, worked long hours at the auto repair shop near Alameda Avenue, his hands perpetually stained with oil and grease, his spirit tireless. Her mother, Maria, a woman of quiet strength and deep faith, managed the home with an iron will disguised by gentle hands, her days filled with cooking, cleaning, and nurturing her children. Their modest house on a tree-lined street, its paint peeling slightly under the harsh sun, was a sanctuary of laughter, the scent of fresh tortillas, and the murmur of Spanish prayers. Izzy was a creature of routine, a small gear in the well-oiled machine of family life. Mornings began with the clatter of pots and pans, the aroma of coffee, and the hurried preparations for school at Usleta Elementary. Afternoons were a blur of homework under the ceiling fan, helping Maria fold laundry or sweeping the porch. But her favorite part of the day was late afternoon, when the sun dipped slightly, casting long, cool shadows, and she could escape outside. She loved to ride her worn-out bicycle, its basket adorned with plastic flowers, down the quiet streets, visiting her best friend, Elena Rodriguez, whose house was only 6 blocks away. They would spend hours drawing in Elena's backyard, sharing secrets or chasing fireflies as dusk settled, the distant mountains turning purple against a fiery sky. On August 14, 1995, the day began like any other. The air was already thick and heavy by 8 a.m., promising another day in the high 90s. Izzy had finished her chores early, eager to spend the afternoon at Elena's house working on a school project about local Texas history. Maria, busy preparing dinner, gave Izzy a quick hug and a reminder to be back before the streetlights came on. "Be safe, Mija," she'd said, a phrase as ingrained in their daily goodbyes as "I love you." Izzy, wearing her favorite faded denim shorts and a brightly colored t-shirt, a small, handmade wooden rosary from her grandmother around her neck, waved cheerfully and pedaled away. The whirring of her bike chain faded into the droning cicadas. The first hint of unease was subtle, a prickle at the back of Maria's neck. It was past 7 o'clock, and the streetlights had already flickered to life, casting an amber glow on the darkening streets. Izzy was always punctual, a trait Maria had meticulously instilled. "Elena's house is close," Roberto had said when Maria first voiced her worry. Maybe they lost track of time. He called Elena's house, but her mother, confused, said Elena hadn't seen Izzy since they finished their project hours ago. Izzy had left around 5:30 p.m., saying she was heading straight home. The prickle intensified into a cold, hard knot in Maria's stomach. Roberto, his usual calm demeanor dissolving, joined her in frantic phone calls to neighbors, other friends, anyone who might have seen Izzy. Panic, cold and sharp, began to grip them. They walked the 6 blocks to Elena's house and back, calling Izzy's name, their voices growing hoarse in the deepening twilight. The familiar street suddenly felt vast, menacing. The air, still hot, seemed to thicken with unspoken fear. Her bicycle, a beacon of her presence, was nowhere to be found. By 9 p.m., with no sign of their daughter, Roberto made the agonizing call to the El Paso Police Department. Officer Reyes, a young, tired-sounding man, took their report. He asked standard questions. Was Izzy prone to running away? Had she been upset? Did she have a boyfriend? Maria, tears streaming down her face, insisted Izzy was not that kind of girl. She was a good girl, responsible. The officer promised to send a patrol car to cruise the neighborhood, but the initial response felt perfunctory, weighted by the assumption that another teenager had simply wandered off. The next morning, the sun rose, indifferent to the family's agony. Detective Mark Harding, a seasoned officer with a weary gaze and a reputation for dogged persistence, was assigned the case. He arrived at the Flores home, his presence filling the small living room with a heavy sense of official urgency. He listened intently as Maria, her voice strained, recounted every detail of Izzy's last known movements. Roberto, his face etched with worry, showed him a recent photograph of Izzy, her bright smile, the distinctive rosary around her neck. Harding noted the rosary, a small handmade piece with intricate carvings on the wooden beads and a simple metal crucifix. She never took it off, Maria whispered, clutching a tissue. The initial investigation was a whirlwind of activity, a jarring disruption to the quiet neighborhood. Uniformed officers fanned out, going door to door, flashing Izzy's photo. Forensic teams meticulously searched the route between Izzy's and Alina's houses, looking for any clue, any disturbance in the ordinary. The bike was a major concern. A missing child and a missing bike, it wasn't a runaway. The heat made the work grueling, but the desperation fueled their efforts. Neighbors organized search parties, calling Izzy's name in the arroyos, checking abandoned buildings, pushing through thorny desert brush that scratched and tore at their clothes. Flyers with Izzy's smiling face, rendered heartbreakingly hopeful, appeared on every lamppost, every store window, fluttering defiantly in the desert wind. Local news channels picked up the story, Izzy's disappearance becoming a community's shared nightmare. But the leads were agonizingly few. No witnesses reported seeing anything suspicious. No tire marks, no signs of a struggle. The bike was never found. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. The initial flurry of activity slowed to a trickle, then to an agonizing drip. The public's attention, fickle and easily distracted, moved on, replaced by other tragedies, other news cycles. For the Flores family, however, time stood still. Their house, once vibrant, became a tomb of quiet grief. Maria walked through her days in a fog, her eyes constantly scanning the street, expecting Izzy to suddenly reappear. Roberto, his shoulders heavy, retreated into a silence broken only by desperate prayers. Mateo grew distant, haunted by the loss of his sister, while Sophia, too young to fully grasp the permanence, often asked when Izzy was coming home. Detective Harding, despite the dwindling leads, never truly closed Izzy's file. He kept it in a drawer marked cold cases, but it haunted him, a perpetual ache in his professional conscience. He would periodically review the file, poring over old witness statements, re-examining the sparse evidence, searching for a detail he might have missed. He talked to the Flores family often, offering words of comfort but finding none for himself. The silence of the desert seemed to mock their efforts, vast and unforgiving, capable of swallowing secrets whole. Years passed. 1995 became 1996, then 2000, then 2005. The pain for the Flores family became a dull, constant throb, a part of their very being. They lived in the shadow of an absence. Then, 11 years after Izzy vanished, in the sweltering summer of 2006, the silence was shattered by a faint, unexpected echo from hundreds of miles away. It wasn't a witness or a confession or a breakthrough in forensics. It was far more prosaic, yet devastatingly impactful. The call came to the El Paso Police Cold Case Unit, where Harding, now older, his hair grayer, still worked, albeit with a heavier heart. It was from a correctional facility in Flagstaff, Arizona. A man named Miguel Mitch Sanchez, a transient in his late 40s with a history of petty theft and minor drug offenses, had died in his cell of natural causes. He'd been serving a short sentence for a probation violation. Sanchez was largely anonymous, his life a series of forgotten arrests and short incarcerations. During the routine inventory of his meager personal effects, a correctional officer named Officer Henderson, sorting through a worn backpack and a small plastic bag, found a small, handmade wooden rosary. It was unremarkable in appearance, except for one detail that caught Henderson's eye. On the back of the simple metal crucifix, barely visible, were faint, crudely scratched initials, IF. And MF. Officer Henderson, a man whose own sister had gone missing years ago, felt a familiar, chilling pang. He knew the anguish of an unanswered question. He knew the small, almost insignificant details that could hold immense weight. He'd seen the flyers for Izzy Flores years ago on a trip to visit family in El Paso. He remembered the rosary description. It was a long shot, a gut feeling, but he decided to follow it. He ran the initials through the NCIC database, cross-referencing with missing persons. The name Isabella Flores of El Paso, Texas, came up, and with it, the description of a distinctive, handmade wooden rosary. Henderson made the call to El Paso. When Detective Harding received the information, a wave of cold dread, then a surge of adrenaline hit him. Could it be, after all these years? He immediately contacted the Flagstaff authorities, requesting the item be carefully secured and sent to El Paso. The rosary arrived a few days later, a small package holding an immense weight of hope and fear. It was precisely as Maria had described, the smooth, dark wooden beads, the intricate carvings, the simple crucifix. And there on the back, undeniable, were the faint, etched initials, IF, and MF. Harding carefully took the rosary to the Flores home. Maria, her hair now streaked with silver, her face etched with the years of silent suffering, picked up the rosary. Her hands trembled. She turned it over and her breath caught in her throat. Her fingers traced the familiar letters, the initials of her daughter and herself. Tears, hot and fresh, streamed down her face, the same tears she had cried 11 years ago, but now mixed with a new, terrifying certainty. "It's hers," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "It's Izzy's." Roberto, standing beside her, slumped into a chair, his face a mask of profound grief and dawning understanding. The discovery of the rosary among Mitch Sanchez's possessions ignited a new, urgent phase of the investigation. Harding and his team delved into Sanchez's past, tracing his movements, his arrests, his transient life across the Southwest. They discovered he had been in El Paso in 1995, working odd jobs, often traveling through the border region. He fit the profile of a predator, operating under the radar, moving from town to town, but Sanchez was dead. There would be no interrogation, no confession, no direct answers from him. The rosary, while a powerful link, was not proof of what had happened or where Izzy was now. The reignited investigation became a race against time, not to find a living perpetrator, but to piece together a ghost's last actions. They reviewed Sanchez's old arrest records, looking for anything missed. They re-interviewed his few known associates, seeking any connection to El Paso in 1995. They used newer forensic techniques on the rosary, searching for DNA, although the chances after so many years and so much handling were slim. They found trace elements of soil on the rosary consistent with the desert terrain near El Paso, adding another layer of grim confirmation. The El Paso community, still remembering Izzy's face on faded flyers, felt a fresh wave of grief and renewed determination. The media, too, returned to the story, Izzy's name once again echoing across the airwaves. The Flores family found themselves in a new kind of limbo. The rosary was a beacon of truth, an undeniable connection, but it was also a cruel torment. They now knew with a horrifying certainty that Izzy had encountered this man. But what had happened? Where was she? The rosary, found in a dead man's hand, offered a terrifying confirmation of Izzy's fate, yet provided no body, no final resting place. Detective Harding, driven by the fresh heartbreak in Maria's eyes, poured every ounce of his remaining energy into the case. He pursued every lead, no matter how small, hoping to find a location, a final piece of the puzzle. The case evolved into a different kind of search, not for the perpetrator, but for Izzy herself, for the closure the Flores family so desperately needed. They searched properties where Sanchez had briefly worked, old campsites in the vast desert, following the faint, winding trails of a man long dead. The rosary, a symbol of faith and innocence, became a grim memento of a life cut short, a tangible link to a past horror. It brought a bittersweet form of closure, the knowledge of who, but not what or where. The search for Isabella Flores continued, now with a name, a face, a ghost of a killer. But the desert, vast and silent, still held its secrets close, its sun continuing to beat down, year after year, on the unresolved mystery of a young girl who disappeared, leaving behind only a whisper of her name and a small, wooden rosary found years later, miles away, among the forgotten possessions of a dead man. The emotional impact was immense, a wound reopened, a hope rekindled only to reveal a deeper sorrow. The El Paso wind still carried the dust, and sometimes, if you listened closely, perhaps the echo of a forgotten laugh.